So we have two very different things to head into. It's worth noting real quick that apparently this is like the most critically acclaimed weekend of the summer. By far.
That's so weird.
So, and with this group, I'm not quite sure if that's what I expected or not.
No.
But we got to go in two completely and totally different directions. And because of my bias against animated movies, I guess we're going to start with Pete's Dragon. Yet another remake. You can't necessarily say live action remake because that nothing is really more or less animated than it is in the past.
Right.
It's just now they're taking the How to Train Your Dragon approach to the story as opposed to the wacky animated character story.
Right.
Okay. So it's kind of like would you say it's Dragonheart for kids?
Dragonheart for kids makes sense.
Dragonheart for kids, I guess, is Dragon Slayer. So
well,
I don't know.
I got a lot of Where the Wild Things Are like vibes like early on.
Because they gave it to a really artsy director.
And it's very Jungle Book too.
Yeah. But I don't know that they could have known that or not, since their productions probably happened simultaneously.
That makes sense.
But under the same roof, I'm sure they each got glimpses. But
of course.
Okay. I was really, really wondering how they were going to go into this, because I remembered that the original is 2 hours and 10 minutes, and pretty much 90% songs.
Yep.
So I was very curious how we were going to go into a totally, completely songless version of this story. Which could be good, or it also could be, where do we stand now if we take all that out? And the answer actually is the fact that this movie kind of represents pretty much exactly what remakes are supposed to be. Because it's the very same basic outline. Orphan kid befriends a dragon in the wilderness.
Like you do.
Not many. And most of the time he's invisible to people.
Yeah.
And then they just do their thing. And then he eventually finds his way to a woman in the real world, I guess you'd call it. And they basically try to civilize him while his dragon wreaks havoc. That very vague outline is pretty much the same story here, but these movies could not be more different from each other. These are two completely and totally different movies. They probably could have changed the names of Pete and Elliot, and pretty much could have made this movie, and it would have vaguely be seen as a Pete's Dragon ripoff.
Yeah.
That's
I agree with that.
Because it is a remake, sure. But they are two completely different movies.
Yeah, completely.
And that's kind of what we always expect out of remakes and almost never get. It's usually either a really poor rehashing or them just trying to bring it up to date, and most of the time they just keep falling on their face. But this is... I wouldn't even necessarily call it much of an update. They could have made this in the, 70s? So, yes. There is a point I want to make really quick. As good as the movie is, and as very well put together it is, and how well shot it is, I think it's very, very important to note that should you see this movie in 3D, I can promise you from the bottom of my heart you're getting ripped off.
You're going to be blind.
Because,
by the time you get out.
As we were saying, if I have the option to not see a movie in 3D, I will not see a movie in 3D.
Of course.
Unless it's something, unless it's like an Ang Lee movie or something. But we had no choice. So we went in, I went in to start with, and we get the back. We actually, I was wondering how dark this was gonna go because we had the Disney logo, we have that little theme, and we have the pan around the castle and the fireworks, and it's like, yeah, this is a Disney movie. And then the movie begins, and it's Pete in the backseat of a car, looking normal, and his parents are in the front seats. And you're like, holy shit, we're gonna see his parents die. That was not in the original movie. We just assumed that.
Right.
We didn't actually see it. And sure enough, they go flying off the road and die, except for him. And he's in... It's not near as comical as I made it sound. And he ends up in the wilderness where he meets Elliot. And the scene already... I spent 95% of the movie just without the glasses. Because even without them, it looks pretty much normal. It's only blurry occasionally. But you can... if you go to a 3D show, you can totally watch it without them and be perfectly fine. It just gets a little blurry sometimes, especially in like the more, big shots. But what you realize about 3D glasses is the way they're tinted in general makes the screen look a lot darker than it is. Like, it's incredible how fucking bright everything looks when you take them off. Well, this first scene when he meets Elliot in the jungle is really, really dark as is. When you put the 3D glasses on, it's like trying to watch a very, very dark scene in a normal movie while wearing sunglasses. You cannot see jack shit. Even when I took them off, I could barely see what was happening. It was really, really dark. And when you put the 3D glasses on, it's practically blinding you. You cannot see anything. And a lot of the movie is like that.
I walked in and it was like almost pitch black in there.
But yes, I don't blame that on the movie or the way it's shot. I blame that strictly on the 3D.
Yeah.
Because while it is very, very dark, you can still, kind of tell what's going on when you're looking at it normally. When it's not in the 3D format, it's probably clearer when you're watching without. So I absolutely positively do not recommend you do that. Because it'll be a massive pain in the ass. I was kind of looking around in the crowd to see if anybody else was kind of having problems with that, but I guess they just kind of were going with it. Because I kind of started to feel like, am I the defective one here, or can we not see jack shit? So there's that. Another thing, obviously, that's very different in regards to the story is not only the directions we take this, but the characters. Because there's a lot of characters, like a large majority percentage of the characters from the original movie we don't even deal with them. Like Shelley Winters and her little crew, and Jim Dale's character, the magician dude with red buttons and all that.
Right.
The guys that are trying to like buy Elliot from him. None of that. Gone completely from this movie. It also does not take place in a lighthouse. And we have replaced Mickey Rooney with Robert Redford and Helen Reddy with Bryce Dallas Howard. And the first thing you'll notice is how much they change the tone just by changing the characters. Because when you watch, like, Jim Dale and Shelley Winters and Mickey Rooney in the original movie, you'll notice that they are going as absolutely positively over the top as they possibly can. Every time I watch the original movie, I am so paranoid that Mickey Rooney's going to have an aneurysm right there on camera. Because he's just going so damn over the top. And immediately, because when he finds out in the original movie, it's Mickey Rooney's eyes bulging and he's kind of running about screaming that he's seen a dragon. That scene in this movie is Robert Redford in pure wise old man warmth mode. Very like Peter Fonda and Uli's Gold type. Just telling us the story of how he once saw a dragon and how nobody believes him. And it's so... He took this really, really over-the-top character and just made him this really kind of warm, grandfatherly figure. And I think it works a lot better that way. Like I said, I guess the tones being so different is why you can't necessarily say one's better than the other, but I really liked the way he did this and how much it combats whatever in God's name Mickey Rooney was doing. And another thing that they do is they've added another character that, come to think of it, I'm kind of surprised was not in the original movie, and that is the girl, Una Lawrence, who I was just praising in Bad Moms. Yeah, I praised something in Bad Moms. I almost forgot I did that. And the interesting thing about her, well, first I was concerned about a couple of things because it's obviously we've got Pete in the jungle and he's doing his thing, and Elliot's flying around and they're doing their lost boy befriends monster story that we've seen, which is great and handled really, really well. But then Pete starts to hear the sounds of saws and wood chippers, and you see trees coming down. I was like, oh shit, they put the environment bad guys in this movie. Oh god. Another one of those, is it? I mean, don't fuck with the environment's a very good message to send to children. But I mean, do we really need another movie where the guys that chop down the trees are the bad guys? But that's not really the direction we take, so that was a relief. But then immediately after that, he's introduced to the girl character, and I was like, oh, so they're gonna do this now. So I was concerned about all this new stuff going in. But as the movie kept going, I started to realize that Pete having kind of a counterpart that's his age is actually pretty important. Because it kind of gives him... There's room for him to have more dimensions because he's a little kid. He's like 11. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of much easier to give him more dimensions and see different things through his perspective when it's not just him and a motherly figure and a dragon. The fact that we now have somebody that's also his own age that he kind of adapts to the world with, I think, is a really nice touch. And come to think of it, something the original movie was surprisingly missing. Like you'd think in 2 hours and 10 minutes they would have done that, but they were too busy, singing and doing school slapstick or whatever that was. I kind of expected the school scene to be in this one, but this one's not much. Apart from Carl Urban's face against the window and the couple of times where Elliot sneezes on people, that's like the extent of the slapstick, which was a huge part of the original movie. So that's just another one of those cases of... I don't really know how people felt about this going in. Like, is this another one of those ones where people were pissed they were remaking a classic, or did they just... I
don't know, because, far as I know, at least from, the circles I'm around, no one said anything about this movie, and it's not doing business, as you noticed.
Because you don't really... Because I was not really hearing anything about it, because I was like... Because when you told me that was our movie, last week, when you told me that was our movie next week, which is now this week, I was surprised, because I was like... Really? Because I haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah.
Is the marketing just non-existent, or what's happening?
Like I said, I've seen stuff on the Disney Channel, obviously. But, other than that, I don't really see anything about it.
So, yeah, but if you're one of those people where you really, really like the original, I don't know that people are as crazy about it as other Disney classics, because it's... It's a little short in comparison.
Some people are, some people aren't. Pete's Dragon is always something that has been important to people that I'm aware of, but it's somewhat kind of there for others.
But I think it works for everybody, because it's really gonna... I was curious how the style would work for children. The children that were in the theater with us just now were really into it, which honestly is surprising with how downplayed it all is.
Right.
Well, when we get to the climax, it's not, but for the most part. And secondly, people who are, should there be a diehard fan out there somewhere of the original movie, I think they'll be pleased with, we're getting the same story, but it's actually something you can actually call a remake. Because they do, in fact, totally remake it into something totally different that's also the same. So I really think it can please everybody. The critics are obviously happy with it.
Oh yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about it.
And going on the style and all that, and the fact that I'm surprised children are actually taking to it. Yeah, it wasn't too long ago I learned this, but it just really struck me as bizarre. This movie is from the same director as Ink and Body Saints. The R-rated Bonnie and Clyde-esque, Malick-esque movie with Casey Affleck, Ben Foster, and Rooney Mara from 3 years ago. Very, very art house movie. I'm to the point I'm really have no idea how he got this job. He wrote the script too. He co-wrote it. So I have no idea how any of that happened. He also did a movie prior to that called Saint Nick, which is really annoying. I don't care for that movie. It's like two kids that, like, you know, live together on their own. You can definitely see, annoying, and as much as I don't like it as I do, watching Saint Nick, it's a lot more easy to see how he got this movie than Ink and Body Saints. But it's like just gross for the sake of being gross, and there's long stretches of nothing happening. It's one of those movies where it's like just the kids walking around, and there's like 20 minutes in before there's any dialogue. And when the dialogue comes is when it gets worse. But he really stepped up his game with Ink and Body Saints. And then a company like Disney giving a guy like him a movie like this just seems very odd. And you hear all this stuff about how directors are just having all creative control taken away from them lately by studios. All studios want to do is just interfere and do their own shit, and just they only have a director because they have to have a director. They basically use them as a puppet to get whatever they want out there. So it really shocked me when I was watching this movie and thinking, this is from the director of Ink and Body Saints, and you can tell. Mm-hmm. That's really surprising. Like, you can tell watching it that they actually had the confidence to give him this movie and say, I mean, I'm sure the studio had, you know, a say in it.
Right.
But watching it, it really just looks like they said, we're going to give this movie to you, just do it how you would do it, and we're okay with that. Because if you were to tell me that director was going to remake Pete's Dragon, the image I would get in my head of what that would probably look like is what the movie looks like.
Yeah.
So I think that's a message too, with how great the movie turned out and the critical response. I think this is another good example to set for maybe studios should just let the directors do their thing, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Because it might be a lot better than what you're going to try to put out. So, and just that, how you can tell it's such a unique vision, too. It's so surreal, actually, to see this movie follow the Disney logo.
Yeah,
you know,
I can see that.
Because when you think, I mean, the Disney company gives us a lot of great things, sure. Some overrated things, but mostly some really good things. But they're probably the very first thing you think of when you say the word corporate.
Oh, yeah.
So that they let David Lowery make this movie exactly as it is and released it that way, and we're okay with it. I really, really like that. And I think studios should really start looking that way. It does start to get... Actually, before I go into that, I would like to say also another thing this movie does that the original didn't that I really like, that the original probably could have benefited a lot from, is how much we see Elliot by himself. Mm-hmm. Because, like, in every time we see him... Because for a 2-hour and 10-minute movie... Pete's Dragon is barely in Pete's Dragon.
Yeah.
In the original movie. It's almost like they were like doing budget cuts with the whole, hey, let's make him invisible. That'll make our jobs much easier. But we see he barely does the invisible thing here. And it's more like a choice. Like in the movie, it's more like in the original Pete's Dragon's a lot like Harvey. Where it's like the is he real or is he not thing. Because the only other person that can see him is Mickey Rooney, and he's drunk all the time. So it's kind of like that actually comes back in Sausage Party. You just have to be in a certain state to see the stuff that's actually going on. But yeah, just the fact that every time we actually see Elliot in the original movie, he's with Pete and he and Pete are doing something, and he's very much a side character. So it's kind of nice to see the title character actually get to do some stuff by himself and just do his thing. His little interaction with the chimney I thought was really funny, and the sprinkler and all that stuff. Which, by the way, while that stuff was going on, like him with the sprinkler and stuff like that, and him just doing his own thing, made me come to a really big conclusion that just kind of hit me, like, right in the middle of the movie. This movie is kind of what the BFG should have been.
Yep. Exactly. Absolutely.
Like, when I imagined the BFG back when I had it in my head that it could have been something great before I saw it, it was kind of something like this that I imagined it would have been.
Yep, that's exactly what I agree with.
And this movie only further goes to show just how much other movies of this ilk are just kind of falling short. Now it does at the end, obviously. I was sitting there. I was like, okay, the tree's getting cut down, and we got Wes Bentley and Carl Urban not believing in dragons, and Carl Urban's the guy that's like, I'm gonna catch the dragon and all that stuff. It finally got to a point where I was like, okay, which climax are we getting? Because no matter what, we're gonna get a climax we've already seen before. It's just a matter of which one. And for a little while, we get E.T.
Yeah.
Because you got to do the lovable creature gets caught, and they want to like probe it and investigate it, and it's like, no, don't do that. And then they're like, yeah, we're gonna keep him captive and make him miserable just because we're dicks. And it's but then we get a nice climax too, where all that kind of the excitement is a little downplayed throughout the movie, but then we get a pretty big climax out of it. I was getting it's weird, a movie like this that's so heartfelt and lovely. It's like there's a big payoff towards the end, and it's like this is also the big payoff in the new Godzilla.
Yeah.
Oh my god! If only he'd actually done that to Carl Urban, this would have been a totally different movie. It's like, oh, Elliot, I didn't know you had it in you. Maybe we should take him down. No, it doesn't go that dark. I do love that little thing at the end though when they're coming at him, and Carl Urban thinks he can just kind of stop the truck from moving by sticking his hand out.
Yeah.
Oh.
Of course, Redford doesn't have any brakes at the time, so he has to negotiate how to make that work.
I thought we were gonna have the Finding Dory end.
Yes.
But yes, this movie is definitely an example of a lot of reasons big studio movies aren't to the quality that they should be, because they're not more like this or handled like this. Just kind of, when you do a remake, you can do the same thing, but make it something, totally different. To where you feel like you're actually having an experience that you've never had before, watching a story you already know.
Make it your own.
That's kind of the whole point of adapting.
Yeah.
That's why it's called adapting.
Take the story and create something that out of the source material that makes it work.
And secondly, just let your storyteller do his thing. Do not interfere. If Disney had a say in some of the stuff that's in here, I'm impressed.
Mm-hmm.
But this very much looks like a director's movie. So all of that is very, very refreshing, especially in a summer that's just been full of studio interference. Last week, damn it. Oh, God. So, yes. And Bryce Dallas Howard is as lovely as she's ever been. Having that, she's playing a different character than Helen Reddy was, but she's definitely got the same warmth and compassion and all that stuff you need. So, Wes Bentley's probably super confused right now, because he was in this with Bryce Dallas Howard, and then he was just in Interstellar with Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
He's like, didn't I just work with you?
That is a fair point. Wow.
Okay. So I gotta get all organized before we talk about the Sausage Party.
Good God.
Our second movie, Sausage Party. Okay, I'm gonna tell you the very first thing that surprised me about this movie. What the hell, Annapurna?
No lie.
Them? I had no idea their name was on this.
I saw that logo and I was like, are you kidding me?
I was like, that's very interesting because that's not a logo we see till award season.
Yep.
So that's very interesting. And honestly, given the category and the acclaim it's getting,
I think there's a possibility.
I'm like going in, I was like, no way. But people like this movie a lot. And we're kind of looking for that. We just had Anomalisa last year.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just had an R-rated animated movie get in. So, and that's... Yeah, both of them have the...
So instead of running like the artsy, anime type movie, we're going to run Sausage Party instead. I buy it. South Park ran.
No, that was before the category. It ran for the song.
I mean, it ran for songs. I mean, obviously it had a presence.
Yeah. Not to mention the scores by Alan Menken.
Yes.
Alan Menken has won.
Speaking of Disney.
I wasn't totally sure, so I had to look it up because it kind of sounded like he was throwing a number out there. But when Rogan was promoting this movie, he said, we got Alan Menken to do the score, and he's won like 8 Oscars. That's not just a number he threw out. Alan Menken has won 8 Oscars.
He has. And for a lot of stuff that has resonated in everybody's mind if you're a Disney fan.
Yeah, because it's what, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin,
yep.
like just all right in a row there, too.
Yep.
So yes, now we have Sausage Party. Let's get into the stuff that the people who would be into this movie are actually into now. We talked about Annapurna and the composer. Let's actually talk about that, right?
Only in an AJ movie review does this stuff happen.
Okay. So, as you probably heard, Seth Rogen was watching Pixar movies one day. He was like, so Pixar shows us the secret lives of, like, toys and cars and bugs and stuff. What if it's food? That would be terrifying. And it is.
It is.
It's like, even with bugs, you kind of think that. Because you kind of had those counterpart movies where they kind of went into a darker territory, like The Ant Bully.
Right.
When they... I always remember that scene in The Ant Bully when they're in the garbage and he finds his friend's smiling severed head. And it's like... Or in Ants, when Danny Glover was headless.
The only time that's going to come up in this conversation.
It's like, well, what if we really, really got to know these really adorable food items that had personalities all their own and had their recognizable celebrity voices and everything was happy and everything was great, and then they got bought, which of course they're tricked into believing is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Being tricked into believing things, though, is something much deeper we'll get into a little later. But first, I would like to point out... Oh, God. Every time I talk about This Is the End, the same thing comes up. I really do think This Is the End is very funny.
Oh, yeah.
But when these guys get together, it's just all about dick jokes.
Yeah.
They've got... and it's very, very clear that this came from the mind of somebody who was super, super high at the time.
Yes. Very, very much true.
And so... I was a little put off for a while because, predictably and quite obviously, this is Innuendo, the movie.
Yep.
For like a straight half hour.
Oh, yeah.
Just a straight half hour, non-stop of dick and sex innuendos.
I was just rolling my eyes at the beginning of this movie.
And it's like, some of them are funny, but then some of it's like... Guys, you got an hour and a half of a movie here. Do you want to do anything else now?
Will you stop?
Do you want to move on just a little bit? We get it. They look like dicks, and the buns are a euphemism in a number of ways.
Right.
And,
I mean, I don't want to hear the people in front of me talk throughout the entire movie, so why do I want to see that on the big screen?
And they're just trying, and it seems like they're just trying to squeeze in as much as they can. And the profanity as well.
Yeah.
Seems very, very forced. There were so many... Like, obviously, I'm not typically bothered by that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not either.
But when it seems like you're because the whole idea is, it's animated, but it's also rated R and really dirty. It felt much less natural than normal when they were saying fuck all the time. It felt less like just a naturally profane movie and more like, we're going to make it extra profane just because it's animated and looks like a kid's movie on the outside.
We have a sign outside the box office now.
Oh, you have that one?
Yeah.
I saw like a picture of it online or something. Is it just a normal sign or is it actually like a...
Oh, they just created one. Like
I saw they actually do promotional ones too.
Yeah, there are promotional ones. We don't have one now.
Where it's like the entire standee is just rated R. Just to make the point clear. People will still make mistakes, but they're trying their absolute best to get the message out there. However, this is one of those movies where you kind of have to... You get more than you bargain for. Because... Like, not just content, either. Well, first off, your question is how far are they going to take it? So like I was saying, for a while there it just seemed like, oh, it's going to be, dick jokes, the movie. Okay. Mm-hmm. But they started pushing some limits.
Oh, yeah.
There's an opening musical number where we get introduced to all the different aisles and the foods in the aisles. That the corn always starts us off with, because the corn is apparently a beautiful singer. And at one point we get Nazi condiments. Now, everybody, you can see the people in front of me too, were like, oh my Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's like Nazi condiments. Nazi condiments are as mild as this movie gets.
Yeah.
that's the very, very, very tip of the iceberg. That doesn't even remotely scratch the surface, the Nazi condiments. Not even close. There is something about this movie also. I mainly mentioned it with, we got a familiar face here in regards to this. I always bring up The Wolf of Wall Street when I say this. If you're going to make an offensive movie, you really need to just go for it and offend everybody. Offend everybody you come in contact with. And this movie does that.
Yeah.
But honestly, not entirely in the way something like The Wolf of Wall Street would do. The Wolf of Wall Street was like that basically just because every character in it was a degenerate scumbag. Here, okay, I think there's going to be disagreements as far as the way this movie is looked at. Because you can look at it one way where it's totally completely offensive and there's probably going to be seen as a lot of ignorance in it. A shit load of stereotypes.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like, almost every single character in this movie is a stereotype. And you could just kind of look at it that way and say it's trying to disguise it as something clever, when in reality it's just vulgar and pointless. But honestly, there's a perfectly other good way you can look at this movie, and that is the fact that pretty much everything it does to offend is saying something about that. Saying something about the group, well, just in general, it just kind of kept going and going and going as the movie went on, and by the time we reached the end, I was just thinking, is there any subject this movie did not touch? Because it's got, like I said, whether you think it's just vulgar jokes or whether you think they're really saying something profound about something, they touch on prejudice, they touch on history, they touch on sexuality, and I don't just mean sexual content, I mean like actual sexuality. Religion is a big factor.
I wasn't expecting this to be a message movie.
Yeah, and going on the religion thing, I also got a little bit of, it's kind of hard, this is weird when you think about it, but it got to a point after a while where I think they kind of transitioned from religion to global warming.
Yep.
Because obviously Seth Rogen's little hot dog finds out about what happens because everybody refers to being bought and being taken away as going to the great beyond, where supposedly you're going to be, it's a paradise through the store doors. And of course Seth Rogen finds out because there's the Honey Mustard that's voiced by Danny McBride, who's seen some shit. Because he's bought and then he's returned because they got the wrong mustard, and he comes back to tell the tale. And when he finds out, he's trying to say to everybody, you don't understand. We're all doomed. If we don't do something about it, we're all gonna die. And somebody's response is, that's just a theory. It's like, oh my god, they're talking about global warming. And this, the humans are referred to as the gods. And it's just, a lot of this movie's focused on, it's like some, like, talk about religion. And kind of like believing in something without proof and just all that stuff. And it kind of takes both sides too. Even if it does kind of seem leaned in one direction or the other. Like it's almost not, like I was kind of saying, like I don't really think of, religion's just not something I think about really.
Right.
But this movie of all movies had me sitting there for a lot of movies thinking, is this movie atheist or not? I can't tell. Because I know they're trying to say something. But it's just kind of, they eventually kind of find a neutral ground. And so, yes, all of that is in there. I don't... There's even a Stephen Hawking character.
Yeah, there is. He's fucking dumb.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too, is this movie has such a one-track mind. When he came around and introduced himself, and he's like, I am gum.
But he has to have the scientific name for it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I wasn't even listening to that because I thought they were talking I thought the bong was talking. I don't know if we're supposed to think that, but I thought the bong was talking.
He was.
So I wasn't listening really to much of what he was saying. But then he came around the corner and he's like, "I am gum." The thing is the movie has such a one-track mind. Prior to this, I thought he said "come."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, that's weird." He looks, and then as I was thinking, I was like, "He looks like." I was like, "Oh, he said gum." Okay. And I like how, we don't really see it, but I guess we're supposed to assume that he was normal as a stick of gum. And now that he's been chewed up and put under a table, he's Stephen Hawking.
I don't get it.
There's a very clever T-1000 joke with that, too.
Yeah.
So yes, as far as it actually being an animated movie, I do like that there's, I like the war scene. With the flower and all that, where it's kind of like a Saving Private Ryan scene, going into the darkest factor of how far this goes. But then they also kind of we really get into this later, but I won't say too much, but I will just say it's almost like they're somewhat aware of their kind of like what they are. As far as being like animated characters, how they all have like they're all normally inanimate objects, but they have like arms with the white gloves, and they all have different kinds of shoes. I noticed that. And then, but you'll notice when you watch like a lot of the older cartoons, or maybe even some newer ones, for some reason, a lot of cartoon characters wear white gloves. And nobody knows why this is. That's just the look of a lot of cartoon characters. And I felt like they were kind of addressing that when the honey mustard was falling and Frank grabbed him. And as he was holding on, he was like, "Oh no, my little white glove is slipping." It's like he's acknowledging he doesn't even know why he's wearing gloves. So I like that little thing too. The animation is really well done. Like, I guess, before it was really established exactly what the movie was and who was behind it, when people would just see stills of the movie, they assumed it was another Pixar movie.
Yeah, I can see that.
So the animation is really well done. Because all the characters are really distinct, too, and a bunch of different items. And I really like the overhead shots where the aisles look like an actual city. It's like Zootopia for fucking food.
Yeah.
As you probably also learned, we have a massive cast list.
Good God, this is crazy.
And it's one of those cases where you see all these names, and they all make sense together. And then there's like one or two names that just really stick out. Where it's like, well, obviously we got Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, James Franco, Danny McBride, David Krumholtz.
Craig Robinson.
Yeah. Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's the clerk. Because one of the very first lines he has is just, "I fucking hate this job," and he doesn't really say much other than just muttering to himself. And like in the middle of the movie, I was like, "Oh my god, I think that's Paul Rudd," and it just made it so much funnier.
Yep.
I gotta be totally honest. I knew he was in it, and I was looking for him everywhere, because I was just really, really interested and how Edward Norton fit into all of this. And that's the thing was, it took me half the movie to identify him. Because we met Sammy Bagel Jr.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of walking around doing his thing. The whole movie, I'm going, who's doing the Woody Allen impression? And it's, holy shit, that's Norton.
Yeah.
Because they've worked together, too, so that makes sense.
Right.
Bill Hader does a couple of... Bill Hader's voice work, he can make his voice so unrecognizable.
Yeah, he can.
Like, it was like over halfway into Angry Birds before I recognized him. And then in this, I didn't know which one... number one, I didn't realize he was more than one. And secondly, I didn't know either one he was until the credits. Because he's also... he does a lot of work on South Park, too. Which I never would have guessed.
Oh. I'm not shocked at anything.
So he's so... See, I always praise him constantly for how goddamn funny he is. But as a voice actor, he's really damn talented, too. Okay, look. Okay? I don't want to pick on anybody.
I know where you're going with this, because I'm going the same direction.
I don't want to pick on anybody, but, obviously I've made my points about Kristen Wiig.
Yep.
And, like, even in animated form, I'm like,
nope.
You know, because she does the thing where she, like, breaks into song. And I was like, yeah, that's what Kristen Wiig does. And she's still doing it, even as a fucking hot dog bun. Oh, God.
Nick Kroll was great here.
I didn't know that was him till the credits. The whole movie, I was like, who's the douche? I have to know who the douche is.
It felt so South Park, too. It really did. That character felt complete South Park.
So that's... And I do like how... that... I mean, not just... I mean, that character, sure, but also... given how deranged the character is, I'm almost surprised Danny McBride wasn't the douche.
Yeah.
Like, you'd think their roles might be reversed. But, yeah. So... what else?
Hayek.
What else? Yeah. One of the voices that a lot of people could hide their voices, like Bill Hader and Nick Kroll and stuff like that. Salma Hayek obviously is gonna be one of those voices you know immediately. It's like, where's the Mexican food?
He's a lesbian taco named Teresa.
Which of course, she's a taco. What else would she be if she's a lesbian? So, but yeah, like I was saying, there's like a whole thing in the middle here where we go into sexuality.
Yeah.
And they like take it seriously. I mean, it's like, yeah, the taco is horny for the hot dog bun, but they play it like real serious.
That's a theme throughout the entire movie, though. For some reason, the food is like horny at all times. It makes no sense whatsoever.
And so that's another thing I kind of wish I had known the whole time. David Crone's was the pita bread, right?
Yeah.
Well,
it's not pita bread. It's the thing. And they even make the joke about it. That
nobody knows what
no one knows exactly what he is. Talking about his virgin olive oil and.
I'm pretty sure he's pita bread though.
Lavash, I believe, is what it says on the. Because that's his last name, actually.
Yeah.
Kareem Abdul-Lavash. The names are priceless.
And then I felt so stupid. I felt so immensely stupid at the end. Because I was listening, and I was like, wait a minute, Franco's in this. Which one's Franco? And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, he was probably one of the other hot dogs. Like, he's just kind of in there somewhere, because he keeps himself so busy, he probably just had a little part. Of fucking course he's the stoner!
Yeah.
Who else was he gonna be?
He was the stoner.
Yes, I know. It's like, why? Why would I think he would have been anybody else but the stoner? Of course.
Pineapple Express coming to Versus sometime soon.
So, yeah, that's another thing where it's like, it's a Seth Rogen movie, and you think, yeah, the humor's gonna be in the same place. Yes. He can't even make a talking hot dog movie without himself getting high.
Nope.
It's like, this is getting ridiculous, Seth Rogen.
Am I imagining things, or is that a kazoo?
Yeah, because it made the noise
every time. It made the kazoo noise every single time that he got high.
Oh, God.
I was like, first off, I don't know if that's possible. Second off.
Okay, so yes, for a while there I was put off because I was like, the humor is so obvious and it's just a constant barrage of very obvious dick jokes and sex jokes and all that other stuff. Jokes that you could see coming from a mile away based on the concept alone. But the more it got into all that stuff, just the way it was able to touch on everything it touched on, and take the concept as absolutely positively far as it would go. I'm not even going to talk about the last scene, because the last scene of this movie is going to be talked about for years and years to come.
Yeah.
To come. So,
Team of
and there's, yes. Notice I say the end of this movie, or the finale of this movie, refusing to use another word, because there's enough puns in this movie as it is.
It's actually, I'm reading the Wikipedia page, it's not even listed in the Wikipedia page. It just simply says, with the food and items free from their terrible fate, they decide to make their own destinies.
I will just say, it's of course, the whole point is that it's food.
Right.
Regardless, I have no fucking idea how they got away with that.
No. It was NC-17, but then they shaved off a few pubes and everything was fine.
Yeah.
I don't know how they still got it.
The pita bread had ball hair. That's the only thing that got them NC-17 that they had to cut out.
How? Was the MPAA just on vacation at the time? They were like, yeah, just go ahead.
We will never understand them. Well, it's like Trey Parker was telling that story.
Right.
About how when you're a studio movie, the MPAA will go much easier on you.
Right.
Because when they made Orgasmo has no nudity. There's the sexual content, but we hardly see any of it.
Right.
NC-17. And he called them up, and he's like, we need to know what we can change. And he's like, you're just NC-17. We're just not going to... No, we don't really do that, because there's this and this and this and this. We just don't do that. You're NC-17, bye. And when they made the South Park movie, they were behind Paramount. So when the South Park movie was NC-17, they called up the MPAA, and they're like, how do we get it rated R? And they say, oh, well... And they gave them all the stuff they needed to cut out.
Because they were connected to a studio.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Wow.
God,
corporate runs everything.
Yeah. So, I'm going to say that the studios went Sony, Columbia, fucking Annapurna. I guess they had enough pull behind them to where they got away with a lot more than they would have with a full-on theatrical release.
That's just...
I
mean, there was like weird murmurings in the theater last night when we were watching that scene.
It's damn funny.
It is.
Even if it can't go beyond a lot of the dick jokes and the obvious jokes and fucking weed, because it's a Seth Rogen movie. But it's just, not only is it still very funny, but just the really... just the way they can just push as far as they can go and manage to bring up all these topics without feeling... I mean, it does feel like you're kind of hit over the head with it because it's so obvious, the points they're making. But just the fact that they were to take a concept like this and touch on all that stuff, and it actually surprisingly doesn't feel out of... Like, it may feel blatant, but it doesn't feel out of place, weirdly. There is so much that I heard that he was saying Seth Rogen spent 10 years on this movie.
I buy that.
Yeah, there's so much in it now.
It is Toy Story for adults with food. That's exactly what it is.
And you can tell he was probably kind of updating shit as shit progressed through that 10 years as well. So yes, that's
this was not the weekend we were expecting whatsoever.
Oh man,
we will be talking about this movie in a couple months.
Yeah, we'll see what. It's very interesting.
To me, though, honestly, I don't know if you agree. Though, I still think I prefer Popstar when it comes to comedies this year. This gets real close
because Popstar had a whole bunch of different stuff going on. Was funny in a whole bunch of different ways,
right?
And this is just kind of that
middle ground.
And this obviously took like a good half hour for me to say, okay, I'm into this.
I wasn't into the beginning of the movie because it felt really forced, and everybody was laughing but us.
But yeah, Popstar is just funny constantly.
Yes,
like I never, like as soon as, like I doubted Popstar going in, but as soon as it started, it was like, yep,
I'm in. I'm totally in.
All right,
that's your video for this week. Real quick before we take it home, some star mounts. Pete's Dragon.
I'll save you some time. They're both 3.
Okay, makes perfect sense to me. All right. So next week, we got a really weird week on our hands. We've got Ben-Hur, which will not be the only time we talk about Ben-Hur, potentially. We have War Dogs, which the only thing I'm worried about is Todd Phillips. That always bothers me. And Kubo and the Two Strings, which is the animated Leica film that kind of came out of nowhere. So
Yeah, because they typically do like a horror theme.
Yeah.
And this is like what, totally different from that.
Yeah. It's very light, actually, just by looking at the trailers. So, continue to watch the other content here on the Podcast Network, Zazzle.com for merchandise, Podcast Network, Facebook fan page, Podcast Network, and Twitter at Podcast Network. Stay tuned for tomorrow night, if you are so inclined, our 7th Halloween Horror Nights 26 podcast, 9 p.m. So stay tuned for that, and if you want to catch up, it's on the channel as well as going to iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. That being said, Sunday, brand new verses. Your cryptic comment is actually going to be Dublin. So we're looking forward to that. And, of course, Gaming with Ash returns. A buttload of wrestling content next week because it is the extremely long pop weekend when it comes to wrestling next week. So Ring of Honor's, NXT, and SummerSlam, plus the regular stuff. So that being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?
That's it.